They were untamable, until humans arrived. The galaxy called them death beasts. No one knew where they came from, and no one could control them. They had claws that could tear steel and roars that broke systems. Their eyes glowed with rage, and their minds refused every signal, every drug, and every trick ever used by alien science. Every species that tried to study or control them lost ships, crews, and cities. The beasts lived in Sector X7, also known as the Dead Zone. No one entered until humans came on a cold metal space station orbiting near Sector X. 7 alien leaders watched the screen in silence. A single human transport ship had just landed near the death zone. Why are they there? A green-skinned Ulic general asked with a nervous shake in his voice. Do they not know what lives there? The council didn't answer because no one knew why humans would go into the one place even the fiercest warriors feared. On the ground, a human stepped out of the ship. His name was Captain Ross. He wore a simple exosuit, nothing advanced. He looked around the ash-covered land, smiled, and said to his team, "All right, let's go meet the neighbors." With him were 5 others, 3 men, 2 women, all calm, all strangely cheerful. They carried packs filled with meat, tools, and ropes. No weapons, no cages, no high-tech devices, just old Earth gear and something no other species ever brought into the dead zone. Hope. The first beast showed up within minutes. It was huge, like a mountain on 4 legs, with black fur and teeth like knives. It snarled. The ground shook, and the aliens watching the live feed prepared to see blood. But Captain Ross didn't run. He didn't shoot. He stepped forward slowly and tossed a chunk of raw meat on the ground. The beast stopped. It sniffed. The air looked confused. The human stayed still. Another piece of meat hit the dirt, then another. The beast moved closer. 1 step, 2 steps, sniffed again. Then something no one expected happened. It ate the meat and left. The council room was filled with silence. One alien finally whispered, "What just happened?" Captain Ross turned to his team and said, "They're not monsters, they're animals. They just need to trust us back." At base, the human team set up camp with simple tents and fire pits. They didn't try to build walls or shields. They didn't act like prey or conquerors. They just waited, watched, listened. That night another beast came, smaller, faster, with glowing blue eyes. It circled the camp, hissing. Humans didn't move. Instead, one of the women began playing a soft tune on a small flute. The beast froze. It tilted its head, and then it sat down. The aliens watching the feed could not understand. "How can this be?" a Zen priest asked aloud. "They react to sound but not to music, not to orders," a scientist answered in a low voice. "No species has ever done this, because no species is this foolish or this brave." Day after day, the humans continued. They mapped the area, marked beast trails, left offerings of food, and never once used force. One day, they found a wounded beast caught in a rockfall. It was angry, in pain, and ready to kill. But the humans didn't run. They dug it out by hand. Beast roared so loud that even the cameras shook. But the humans didn't stop. When they finally freed it, they stepped back slowly. The beast limped away and returned the next morning with another beast. It dropped a dead animal at the human's feet and left a gift. The council chamber exploded with arguments. Some called it fake, others called it luck. But some started to wonder, what if the humans saw something others never could? What if the beasts were not mindless killers? What if they were just waiting for the right kind of touch? The aliens had always used tech and weapons, but humans were different. They used instincts, emotions, patience. They used heart. One alien officer said, "They are not strong like us or fast like us, but they are insane," and the beasts seemed to like that. By the end of the week, 7 beasts had come close to the camp. 2 allowed humans to touch them. 1 let a human child ride its back for a moment before running off. The universe changed that day, because for the first time in history, the untamable had made eye contact with a species that didn't try to rule them, only understand them. As the video feed ended, Captain Ross looked up at the drone and smiled. "Tell the galaxy, they're not beasts, they're just waiting for someone crazy enough to love them, and humans are just that crazy," aliens observed. Humans didn't just survive, they bonded. Across the galaxy, thousands of eyes watched the human camp through hidden drones and spy satellites. No one could believe what they were seeing, not just survival, not just strange behavior, but something even more impossible, a growing bond between humans and the death beasts. Every day more beasts came closer. Some watched from the trees. Others sniffed the edges of the camp. A few dared to come into the firelight, where humans offered them food, water, and even a place to rest. The aliens didn't understand it at all. The death beasts had always been mindless, wild, full of rage. They destroyed anything that moved. Now they were lying near sleeping humans without attacking. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Scientists, generals, and observers all gathered. The footage kept looping on the large screens, showing a moment where a massive six-legged beast leaned down and allowed a human girl to touch its forehead gently as if it welcomed her hand. The room filled with silence, then noise, then panic. They must have drugged them, someone shouted. Another screamed, "It's a trick. Humans are manipulating them. This is dangerous." But one alien elder, a gray-skinned scholar from the Talari species, stood and said in a calm voice, "If it were drugs, the beasts would show side effects. If it were tech, the readings would show interference. There is none. What we are seeing is real, and we do not understand it." Back on the ground, the human team remained focused. They were not there to impress the galaxy or prove anything to anyone. They were there to understand the beasts and build a connection. Ross, the captain, believed that the creatures were intelligent in their own way, not like humans, not like any species in the council, but something deeper, something wild but aware. They began to name the beasts not with numbers or tags, but with nicknames based on behavior. One massive horned creature that always walked in circles was called Spiral. A younger, fast one with silver eyes was named Ghost. There was even a blind one who only came at night and never touched anyone, but always sat close. They called it Shadow. These names meant nothing to the galaxy, but to the humans they were everything. It made the beasts real, not monsters, not enemies, but living, breathing individuals with habits and choices and emotions. Team started keeping journals every day. They wrote down patterns, behaviors, reactions, what sound calmed, which beast, what food was accepted, what time of day they arrived. The notes began to form something new, a language not of words, but of actions. A bridge between species built not by force, but by observation and trust. The alien scientists were forced to watch in disbelief as each interaction brought more surprises. Spiral began following one of the human engineers during patrols, staying close like a protector. Ghost once pulled a human out of a sinkhole using its tail and walked beside him until he reached camp again. And Shadow, the blind one, it began humming when the humans played soft music from Earth, songs of peace and sleep. It was not control, and it was not domination. It was something else. One night something unexpected happened. A new beast arrived, one no one had seen before. It was huge, even larger than Spiral, its body covered in deep scars, its eyes burning with hate. It stormed into the area, growling, ready to destroy everything. The other beasts ran. The humans stood still. Captain Ross stepped forward without a weapon, without a shield, his voice calm. He spoke not in commands, but in understanding. "We are not here to fight. We are not here to hurt you. If you want us gone, we will go." Beast roared louder, charged, and stopped just inches from him, breathing heavily, staring into his eyes, and then slowly, without reason, it turned and walked away. The moment became the most replayed video across the galaxy. Every alien race from the farthest moons to the inner core watched it again and again. They studied it, scanned it, tried to find answers, but none came. The only thing they saw was a human facing death with no fear, and something inside the beast choosing not to kill. That night the council had no words left. The humans didn't tame the beasts. The aliens finally realized the humans connected with them. The beasts were still wild, still dangerous, but they responded to something that no other species had offered before. Not fear, not strength, but acceptance and patience. The stars' debates began raging. Some races demanded the humans stop, afraid of what these connections could become. Others begged for help, asking the humans to teach them how to bond with their own wild species. But deep inside the council halls, a quiet truth began to grow. The humans were not just brave, they were not just clever, they were something else, something rare in the galaxy. They were willing to enter darkness, and instead of fighting, they offered peace, and the beasts had accepted in. The days that followed, one of the youngest beasts brought something to the human camp, a broken alien drone covered in vines and bite marks. It dropped it near the fire, then sat and waited as if giving a gift. Ross smiled, picked up the wreckage, and whispered, "Thank you." For the first time in galactic history, a species had entered the dead zone and not only survived but been welcomed, and the beasts, once known as untamable, had begun to change, not because they were forced, but because someone finally saw them, not as monsters but as equals, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Mad experiment begins, the taming protocol. The Galactic Council could no longer ignore the humans. Their mission into the dead zone had turned from suicide to something extraordinary. Footage of beasts sitting beside campfires, of a child drawing symbols in the dirt beside a horned predator, and of Ross walking calmly between creatures that once ripped armored vehicles in half, had become the most watched media in history across hundreds of systems. Aliens argued, some called it luck, others called it manipulation, but one thing was clear. The death beasts were changing, and only around humans, so the council made a decision. They summoned Captain Ross to the High Council chamber, a grand place floating in the skies of Karuz Prime. He arrived not in a warship or a government cruiser, but in the same rough ship he had taken to the dead zone. His clothes were worn, his boots were dusty, and yet he walked with confidence inside the chamber. Dozens of species watched him one by one. They asked their questions. How did you control them? What tech did you use? What drugs? What signals? What tricks? Ross stood silent for a moment, then replied, "We did not control them. We connected. We didn't use science. We used kindness and patience." Laughter echoed through the room. The council was not ready to accept such a human answer. But one voice from the back, an old Zaran biologist, stood and said, "Then let us test it for real." That single sentence changed everything. The council approved a live experiment. They called it the taming protocol. The plan was simple: take one death beast, one human, and observe if the bond was repeatable outside the original team, in a controlled environment. No forest, no open land, just a clean test zone and strict monitoring. Most believed the human would die. On the first day, the beast they chose was known as Unit 74, captured by accident after it walked willingly into a human-built enclosure. It was scarred, powerful, and had already killed 3 drones during transport. No one wanted to go near it. The human they chose was not a soldier or a scientist, but a young woman named Lena, a volunteer animal psychologist from Earth. She had never seen war, never fired a weapon, and had never been in space. Before this mission, her only tools were a notebook, a soft voice, and a strange habit of singing to herself when nervous. On day 1, she entered the holding zone alone. No suit, no weapons, just simple clothing and a calm expression. The beast stood at the far end, growling low and watching every move. Lena sat on the floor, opened her notebook, and began drawing patterns in the dust. She made no eye contact, no sound. After a while, she began to hum a simple tune, a lullaby from Earth, the same song she used in her animal shelter back home. The beast did nothing, but it didn't attack. On day 2, she entered again, this time with a small container of meat. She placed it in the center of the room, then sat down. The beast stared, then walked forward slowly, not towards her, but the food it sniffed, took the meat, and walked back again. By day 4, the beast no longer growled when she entered. By day 7, it sat near her for over an hour, watching her draw. By day 10, it followed her movements with curious eyes and even responded when she changed her tune from soft to fast. The aliens watching from behind the glass wall were speechless. They ran scans, tested for hidden devices, chemicals, brainwave manipulation. But there was nothing, just a girl, a song, and a beast that had once destroyed him. Gross destroyed an entire squad, now sitting like a pet waiting for attention. Lena made one note in her journal that the council later printed and sent across the stars. It read, "They are not angry, they are just lonely." By day 12, the beast allowed her to touch its face for 2 seconds before backing away on day 15. It lay down beside her when she began to sketch it in her notebook. The footage became the second most watched event in the galaxy, second only to Ross's first encounter. Then came the moment that silenced even the loudest skeptics. An alarm blared in the facility. A fire had broken out in a nearby chamber systems. Failed smoke filled the taming zone. Guards ran in shouting orders, fearing the beast would go wild and rip Lena apart instead. Unit 74 stood between her and the flames, then pushed her gently toward the exit before following her out. Chamber fell quiet. The beast stood still as fire suppression droids arrived, but never once looked violent or afraid. The council held a second meeting. This time no one laughed, no one called it madness. The data was clear, the bond was real, the method was human, and the results could change everything. Now races across the galaxy wanted answers. How did humanity do what no other could? What made them different? Some said it was their history of living beside wolves, lions, and wild beasts. Others said it was their strange need to care for dangerous things. But Ross said it best in a private message to the council: we are not special. We are just willing to risk kindness, even when it might kill us. And that is something the galaxy had forgotten. Taming protocol was declared successful, and a new chapter began where humans were no longer just explorers or warriors. They were becoming something more, something the stars had never seen before. Beastmasters of the galaxy. Fear turns to respect. But one beast refuses. The galaxy now watched humans with new eyes, not just as clever survivors or emotional explorers, but as something far more dangerous, a species capable of reaching into the heart of chaos and returning with a friend. Every major planet now had delegations requesting human handlers. Scientists begged for copies of Lena's notes. Soldiers asked to be trained by Ross and his team. Governments offered millions for access to the so-called taming methods, but no one truly understood how it worked. Not even the humans. They just knew it required patience, empathy, and a complete lack of fear. So far, every attempt by other species had failed when they entered the zones with cockpit gear or practiced body language. The beasts ignored them or attacked, but with humans the creatures showed caution, then curiosity, then something close to trust. But not all creatures were ready to change. Deep within Sector X7, beyond the known trails and marked territories, there was one beast that even the others avoided. The few drones that tried to observe it were torn to pieces within seconds. Its presence caused other beasts to retreat. Its territory was silent. Even the wind seemed afraid to pass through it. They called it the Black King, not because of its color, but because of the way it moved, with complete power and without hesitation. It was larger than all others, faster and cruel in ways no one had seen before. It never accepted food. It never listened to music. It never paused. It only killed. The council warned Ross to leave it alone. Even some humans agreed, saying this was one boundary that should not be crossed. But Ross had a different view. He believed that if they were to truly understand the beasts, they had to face the worst one, not for power, not for fame, but for truth. The human who stepped forward was not young, not fresh from training, but a quiet, weathered man named Jonas. He had no titles, no degrees, just stories he never told. He had once tamed wild Earth lions in the wastelands of the old continent. He had been alone for 10 years after losing his family in a beast attack on another planet, but he never hated the creatures he had always believed. Fear was the language of the weak, and pain was not a reason to stop. When Jonas volunteered, no one expected much. Even Ross hesitated, but Jonas simply said, "I've met monsters, and sometimes they just need someone to sit with them long enough." The dropship left him near the edge of the Black King's territory. No walls, no backup, just a pack with dried meat, some water, and a small hand-drawn picture of his daughter. The forest around him was dead, not from poison, but from presence. Even the grass seemed to lower when the Black King passed. For the first 2 days there was nothing. Jonas walked slow, made camp near a stream, lit a small fire, and waited. He sang, sometimes low, earth songs that spoke of rivers and hills, of old memories. He left meat near trees, then moved away, but the food was never touched on. The third night the silence broke. A Rumble shook the trees, then a shadow darker than night moved through the clearing eyes. Like burning coal stared at Jonas from across the fire. It did not growl, it did not charge, it simply watched Jonas. Said nothing. He did not reach for food or move closer. He just nodded as if greeting an old friend. The shadow disappeared into the trees. The next day Jonas found the meat gone, not eaten. There was no blood, no crumbs. It was simply gone, as if accepted, but not enjoyed. He smiled and left more this time, shaped it into a pattern, a circle with a line through it, a sign of peace from old Earth tribes. By the sixth day, the Black King stood just meters away, not attacking, not moving, but present. Jonas began talking, not loud, not demanding, just sharing pieces of his past, of the animals he had tamed, of the mistakes he had made. He never expected the beast to understand, but he felt it mattered. The moment of truth came on the ninth day. A storm rolled through. Lightning struck near the camp. Jonas slipped on wet rock and fell, breaking his arm badly. He could not move. The fire was dying, the rain heavy and cold. Through the haze he saw the shape again, the Black King walking forward slowly, eyes locked on him, breath deep and heavy. Jonas did not speak, he could not, but he looked into those eyes and smiled weakly, saying just one word, please. The beast stared, then did something no one would believe. It bent down, gripped Jonas's jacket with its teeth, and dragged him under the remains of the ship wing where the storm would not reach. It lay beside him, unmoving, until the rain stopped. When the council received the drone footage, no one spoke for a full hour. The strongest, most violent creature in the zone had not only spared a human, it had protected him. Something deeper than training or tricks had happened. Respect, not earned through dominance, but through silence, pain, and time. Jonas was later brought back to the station, his body hurt, but his voice calm. When they asked him what changed, he answered, it didn't change, it just stopped waiting to be hunted. The Black King returned to its forest, no longer attacking passing drones, and for the first time allowed other beasts to enter its space. The humans had done what no species believed possible. They did not break the wild, they invited it to be seen, and the wild had accepted. The bond that shook the galaxy. The footage of the Black King lying beside a wounded human spread through the galaxy faster than any weapon or fleet ever had. It was shown in schools, on warships, in alien temples, and even in the dark tunnels of the fringe colonies, across every screen and every language. The message was the same. The wild had bent not to force, but to understanding, and that bond was formed by a species no one had expected. Humans, alien leaders who once mocked Earth's primitive ways, now held long meetings in private rooms asking the same question: can we trust creatures who make peace with monsters? The council sent new teams to observe Earth's influence, not to stop them, but to study them up close. The humans agreed with one condition: do not interfere, just watch and learn from a distance. By now, the camp inside Sector X7 had grown larger, but not stronger. No walls, no turrets, no electric fences, still only tents and cooking fires and circles of stones with hand-drawn symbols, each marking a moment of trust. Death beasts no longer attacked the camp. In fact, they gathered near it, sat in quiet groups, and sometimes even played among themselves. Behavior no one had ever recorded before. A new form of social life was developing, right before alien eyes, and humans were at the center of it. One morning, as the twin suns rose, a beast known as Hollow approached the edge of the camp. It was tall, thin, and had scars running across its face that looked like old claw marks. Ross and his team had seen Hollow before, always distant, always watching, but never close until now. Hollow carried something in its jaws, not prey, not a weapon, but a broken alien device. A drone camera crushed, but not destroyed it, dropped it at Ross's feet, then stepped back. Ross knelt, examined the device, and turned to the nearest drone watching from above. Tell the council they left their eye in the woods and someone brought it back. The act of returning property was considered sacred among several alien cultures, and when they saw Death Beast follow that rule, everything changed. No longer were the humans viewed as reckless or just lucky. They were being seen as something else entirely: ambassadors of chaos, whisperers of the untamed soul. Across the stars, governments began drafting requests for human trainers. Research teams begged Earth to share its secrets, but Earth remained silent, not out of arrogance, but because they didn't have an answer. There was no textbook, no protocol, only instinct and presence. Greatest minds in the galaxy still couldn't explain why a beast like Hollow would choose to give instead of take, why Spiral now slept near human fires, or why Shadow now hummed softly with the flute songs played at night. The logic failed because logic was not the answer back. At the council chambers, an ancient alien known as Vexor Prime stood to speak. His voice carried through the halls like thunder. He had seen hundreds of wars, planets burn, empires fall, but now his old eyes watched something more powerful than conquest. He said, "I have seen weapons bend knees, and I have seen fear build empires, but I have never seen respect given by the wild to those who dared not to rule it, but to walk beside it. And those creatures, those humans, they are not taming beasts. They are waking something ancient." And he was right. The beasts were changing, not just in behavior, but in posture and sound and presence. They became more aware, more communicative. One began to mimic human hand signs. Another tried to copy the rhythm of footsteps. And one even brought a strange glowing stone, as if offering a gift not just to humans, but to whatever they believed humans spoke. To Lena, who had once sat silently in the test zone, now stood at the edge of a new open field, watching as three young beasts followed her with playful curiosity. She had no tools, no tricks, only a soft smile and a tune she had sung every night since arrival. When a drone asked her what she was doing, she replied, "I think they're learning how to be more than just beasts, and we're learning how to be more than just observers." And then the moment came that sealed history forever. A human child no older than 7 walked into the field without permission or escort. Lost and confused, the Black King appeared first, tall, dark, and massive. The aliens watching held their breath, expecting disaster. Instead, the beast lowered its head, gently nudged the child back toward camp, and waited until she was safe. Single act broke every belief system that had painted the death beasts as mindless killers. Not even the coldest military leaders could argue against the truth anymore. Something had changed, not just in the beasts, but in the entire structure of understanding. Bond was real, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Humans had not come to tame, they had come to connect, and through that connection, the fiercest of creatures had remembered what it meant to trust. And the stars, for the first time in ages, felt smaller because now even the monsters had someone to call a friend. Jealous aliens try to copy and fail. Across the galaxy, leaders watched the videos over and over. Humans walking with monsters, humans feeding them, touching them, laughing beside them. Images that once seemed impossible now became daily reports, but not everyone celebrated. Many alien governments began to feel threatened not by the beasts, but by the humans themselves. Could a species so young, so wild, so undisciplined succeed where others failed for centuries? Some called it magic, others called it manipulation, but most called it unfair. And in the deep halls of power, jealousy began to grow. It started with small efforts. Scientists from the Farn Empire built artificial camps using replicas of human tools. They studied human movement, copied earth smells, even broadcast earth music from machines, hoping to lure the beasts. But when the creatures came close, they did not stay. Instead, they roared in rage, destroyed the fake camps, and vanished into the dark. Then came the second wave. Trained alien handlers wore human-like suits, practiced human body language, and even tried using earth phrases through translation chips. They walked into the dead zone with confidence and were carried out in pieces. Hours later, one beast was seen bearing a helmet, the only part of a handler. It did not destroy. The message was clear. The beasts were not reacting to the surface of humanity. They were responding to something deeper, something no code or uniform could copy. Frustrated, the Grellock Union issued a statement accusing Earth of hiding technology. They claimed a human bond was engineered, a hidden system of control. But when asked to prove it, their evidence failed under inspection. Humans had no brain implants, no sonic tools, no scent-based chemicals, only skin, blood, breath, and strange open hearts. Ross was invited to speak before the full galactic Assembly billions watched as he stepped onto the crystal floor of the central chamber. He wore the same boots he had worn since his first day in the dead zone, dust and scratches still visible. He looked at the gathered leaders and said, "We did not unlock the beasts, we unchained ourselves." They asked him what that meant, and he replied, "You try to control everything. We tried to feel everything. You analyze threats, we accepted. Pain, you want answers. We made friends." Many scoffed, but others listened. Still the attempts continued. A research team from the Valari Dominion created a mechanical beast, a robot designed to interact with real beasts. It looked perfect, sounded real, moved like one of them, but the death beasts were not fooled. They circled the machine, sniffed it once, and tore it apart. Piece by piece they left the metal scattered like bones, and never returned to that area again. Soon reports began to surface that some governments were capturing young death beasts and trying to force them into obedience using old methods: chains, collars, shock pulses, but the results were always the same. The beasts went mad. The facilities were destroyed, and in 2 cases, entire stations had to be abandoned. The most shocking event came from the Arvok Syndicate. They sent a team of elite bioengineers into the wild, armed with a synthetic version of human emotion, a chemical designed to simulate kindness. They injected it into one of their own and sent him to bond with a mid-level beast for 1 full day. The experiment seemed to work. The beast stayed calm, even ate from the agent's hand. But on the second night, the beast smelled something strange, leaned close, sniffed the agent's chest, and let out a sound no one had ever recorded before. Not a roar, not a growl, but something like disappointment. Then it turned, walked away, and never came back. The agent collapsed within hours, his system broken by the chemical, his brain confused by the false empathy. The experiment was declared a failure, and the beast was never seen again. One old alien philosopher summed it up in a single sentence: "The beast see the soul, not the skin." Earth was no longer just the blue planet of water and war. It had become something new in the eyes of the galaxy, a mirror that reflected what others could not accept. Humans did not control beasts because they were superior. They bonded because they were willing to be broken. Jonas, who had once faced the Black King, was asked during an interview, "How did you win its respect?" And he laughed and said, "I didn't win anything. I just stayed when no one else would." The Council finally passed a new law only humans could operate in. Sector X7, only humans could lead beast studies, and all other species had to apply for observation rights only. This time, instead of anger, many aliens accepted the decision with quiet understanding because they had finally learned the truth. You cannot fake connection, you cannot program loyalty, and you cannot tame the untamable unless you're willing to walk in without armor, without pride, and without a plan. And that was something only humans were crazy enough to do. Humans became the beastmasters of the stars. The stars had changed once they feared Sector X7. Now they studied it. Once they called the death beasts monsters. Now they whispered their names with quiet respect, and behind every image of a beast resting near a fire or carrying supplies across dangerous ground stood one constant: humanity. No one had asked to crown the humans as leaders of the wild, but the beasts had already chosen across the galaxy. New stations opened, known as peace zones, places where young beasts raised in the dead zone could learn how to live beside intelligent life, and the only ones allowed to lead these places were humans, not because they demanded it, but because they were the only ones the beasts would follow. At the center of it all, Ross, Lena, Jonas, and the original team worked together, no longer just explorers. Now they were teachers, guides, and sometimes translators between the hearts of 2 worlds. One day, a signal reached the Council from the edge of known space, a small outpost near the Black Maw. Nebula had gone silent. The last message was a warning: energy spikes, massive lifeforms, no known species. The fear in the voice was clear, then static. Council hesitated, debating how to respond. The area was too unstable for fleets, and no species wanted to risk open war in unexplored territory. But then someone asked a different question: what if the beasts could help? And no one had ever taken the death beasts beyond their home. Their world was harsh and sacred, and yet, when Ross presented the idea to Spiral and Ghost, The two oldest bonded creatures, they responded with clear movements. One paw touched a star map, the other circled the location of the distress signal. They understood, and they were willing to go. A new ship was built, not a war vessel, and not a lab, something in between. It had no weapons, only reinforced rooms, open-air chambers, and forests built inside the hull. Trees grew under artificial sunlight. Wind blew through vents, and in the center stood a circle of stone. The humans called the ship Unity 10. Beasts were selected, each bonded to a handler, not as masters, but as equals. Spiral carried Jonas into the launch bay with pride. Shadow stood beside Lena, unmoving but alert. The Black King arrived last, towering, silent, and when it stepped aboard the ship, every screen across the galaxy lit up with its image and one sentence: the Wild has joined the stars. The journey took 6 days. The Unity traveled through wormholes and dust storms, beasts resting calmly near windows as stars passed by like rivers of light. When they reached the Black Maw, they found what had been feared and Moria, creature unlike anything known, floated through the darkness, massive, made of smoke and lightning, its shape always changing, its eyes endless circles of gold and blue. It had already destroyed the outpost and was now heading toward nearby settlements. The fleets were powerless there. Weapons failed their systems, froze the energy field around the creature, bent gravity and time. But when Unity arrived, the field shifted slightly, as if noticing something new, something familiar. Ross stood at the front of the observation deck. He opened the wide glass view and allowed the beasts to step forward. They growled, hissed, then fell silent. The creature stopped moving, watching them. Then slowly it reached out, a tendril of shadow, toward the ship. The Black King moved first. No roar, no fear, just presence. It walked to the edge and stared into the heart of the storm. And in that moment, something passed between them, not in words, not in sound, but in shared pain, shared loneliness. The creature paused, then its form began to tremble. Spiral lights blinking through its skin. The beasts below began to hum the same hum Shadow used in the early days in the Dead Zone. The sound traveled through space, without science, without logic, reaching the creature in a way nothing else had. Then the creature turned, it drifted away, slowly, calmly vanishing into the nebula, its storm fading like a dying fire, leaving only silence behind. Outpost was gone, but the settlements were safe. Unity returned not as a rescue ship, but as a legend. The story of how monsters once feared had saved a world without lifting a single claw, spread like wildfire. Humanity had done what empires could not. They had tamed no one. They had controlled no one. They had simply stood with the wild and earned something stronger than power. They had earned trust. The peace zones expanded. The Council established the Department of Interspecies Harmony. Led by both humans and beasts, communication grew between death beasts and intelligent races, using movement, sound, and shared dreams. Soon children across the stars were taught not how to fear, but how to understand, how to connect, how to see beyond the surface. Years passed. Ross retired quietly, building a home near the old camp in Sector X7. Spiral still visited every winter. Lena opened a school where children learned how to speak with animals, not through commands, but with calm and love. Jonas returned to silence, walking the forests alone, sometimes sitting with the Black King under the moonless sky without saying a word. And the beasts thrived. They were no longer untamable because someone had dared to try, not with weapons, but with a heart open wide enough to let the wild walk in. And the galaxy remembered the lesson forever. Sometimes the greatest strength is not in conquering the darkness, but in sitting beside it until it no longer feels alone. The end.